It's okay not to be okay, because what mental health needs is more sunlight and more unashamed conversations. This is Health Matters, your number one guide to health and wellness. I am Amanda Amos-Igbuwe. Statistics from WHO in 2017 show that 2.7% of Nigerians suffer from anxiety disorder. Another study showed that bipolar disorder accounted for 21% of mood disorder cases. Joining me to unpack the link between anxiety, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia is Dr. Olusola Kayode. He's a medical doctor and a mental health coach. Welcome, Dr. Kayode.
Thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kayode. So now let's do the math and begin with the most pressing questions in order to delve further into this. So let's break down these mental health disorders by their definition. What exactly is anxiety? What is bipolar disorder? And what is schizophrenia?
Yes, thank you again for having me here today. It's always a pleasure to have discussions about mental health, because this is a part of our day-to-day life that seems to be ignored a lot. So I'll just go to your question, trying to define these terms. Yeah, there might be no very clear definitions for these disorders, but there is what we call a very short explanation for them, and because it's tied around the symptoms and what they express. So I'll start with anxiety disorder. There are a group of mental disorders characterized by excessive fear and anxiety and other related behavioral disturbance, such as avoidance in some few. And usually, what characterizes them the most is that this fear and anxiety, they are not in proportion to the actual threats. So what this means is that we all have fears, we all have things that we may be scared of, but the disproportionate fear to what the stimulus is, that is where the problem comes for anxiety, comes in with anxiety disorder. And this causes clinically significant distress or impairment in functioning. So keywords here is that there is the fear and the anxiety, and the second keyword is out of proportion to the actual threats. And the third keyword here is that it causes stress or functional impairment for the person. For bipolar disorder, from the word bi, it means that we are at two poles. This is basically like a mood disorder characterized by, you have episodes of abnormally elevated mood with episodes of abnormally reduced or depressed mood. So basically, bipolar is telling us that this person comes this point is with full energy, excessively abnormal full energy. Then in the next few weeks, the person comes with very bad depression, and this characterizes bipolar disorder. And for schizophrenia, this is actually a major psychotic disorder. When you say psychosis, this is what it means, a chronic psychotic disorder. And here there is a distortion from the actual reality. So there is the reality, and there are people that have distorted view of the reality in terms of their thoughts, in terms of their perception, their experience, their affect and behavior to the reality. So this could serve as definitions for these disorders.
All right, thank you so much. So now, apart from like hereditary, which is a main thing in every illness, it's a major factor. Apart from hereditary, genetics, what other biological and environmental factors could lead to these mental illnesses?
Okay, yeah, thank you for that question. So there are a lot of factors. Genetics being the most prominent, because if there is a family history of any mental illness, the chances that the offspring or the children that comes from that family will have similar is very high. But there is also a balance between genetics and the environmental factors, because environmental factors has been found to have key roles, significant roles um, in expression of these mental health conditions. So those two are very key, because especially for anxiety disorders, for example, where people have fear, and you realize that a lot of this fear can be tied down to life events that have happened in the past. Example, abuses, trauma. Some they've been in financial jeopardy at some point, and whenever they hear the thought of money or anything related to money, they just have this unusual fear. Some it is heartbreaks, relationship problems. This kind of stressful life events are also risk factors to having some of these mental disorders. So you have the stressful life, you have medical conditions too, like especially patients or people with asthma, for example, because they've been persistently out of school or out of usual activities. They tend to have some of this anxiety and some other disorders. The other risk factors for most of these mental health disorders will be of substances like alcohol, stimulants, caffeine. This passes for all the types of disorders, for anxiety, for bipolar disorders, also for significantly for schizophrenia. So this substance varies from things as mild as caffeine, to things as significant as alcohol, and those very hard stimulants. So childhood adversity to children that have been neglected in the past, they also have high chances of having some of these some of these mental health disorders. Then poor sleep, quite a number of risk factors for this. Some people, some of these disorders are commoner in females, especially anxiety-related disorders are commoner in females than male, but schizophrenia is commoner in male than females. So these are just a summary of what could lead to these disorders.
Okay, so now you mentioned anxiety being more common in females, and then you mentioned schizophrenia being more common in males. So generally, what are the major characteristics and symptoms that a male or a female should look out for?
Okay, yeah, so this, as I've tried to approach from the onset, the symptoms vary. So let's take anxiety, for example. People have anxiety to different things. But one thing that is constant for anxiety is the fear. There is always an how do I put it, overreaction to a specific stimulus. For example, people have phobias. Yeah, in some of these classifications, they've tried to separate phobic disorders from anxiety disorders, but previously they are grouped together. Fear of rats, fear of cockroaches, fear of this, fear of that. This can also be seen as some form of anxiety-related disorder. So fear of exaggerated fear to these things are the most common symptoms that people actually present with. Then you have other symptoms like sweating, excessive sweating, the heart will be racing. Some people come up with heart racing, trouble sleeping, physical tension, irritability. They just snap easily. At the slightest, they snap. So these things are some of the symptoms that anxiety disorders can come with. Some they start going to urinate frequently, going to use the toilet frequently. For bipolar disorder, because we have two parts of it, we have the elevated mood, which we call the manic episode. Then we have the depressed mood. So you have unusually high, excited. You see someone wake up in the midnight, started playing music, comes out, drives all through the neighborhood, very loud music, flashy colors, in terms of what they wear. These are actually some of the signs of elevated mood. So the take of the overspend, that is overspending, very important. You see them overspending, reckless driving, unsafe intercourse, just going about doing this doing these things. Then for the low part, the depression part, you just see them with sadness, emptiness, loss of interest. They might not even sleep at all. These are some of the symptoms of bipolar disorder. Then it's called schizophrenia, because this is a distortion. So these symptoms are a bit more specific. You have them hearing voices that are not there, seeing things that are not there, having strong beliefs that people are spying on me, and delusions, very strong delusions, that I am the president of Nigeria, president of the whole world, and Donald Trump must come to me to ask for permission to do anything. Those kind of strange delusions. So these things are very important. For some people, it's just social withdrawal, lack of motivation, blunted emotion and affect, unusual and strange behavior. This subsequently leads to they won't be taking care of themselves enough, look dirty and unkept. So these are just some of the things that schizophrenia comes with.
Thank you very much. So now, apart from MDQ, that's mood disorder questionnaires, what other diagnosis methods are out there? And then, how accurate are these MDQs, the mood disorder questionnaires?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for this question. This is actually a very important part, especially for mental health disorders, because the mental health diseases or disorders are not like malaria or infections, or where you can easily go to the lab, take blood samples, and get results. It is there or it is not there. For mental health disorder, there is no test that you can go and test from the lab, or go and do an image in a scan that you now diagnose those situations. But usually we use questionnaires. So the first part of it is the clinical assessment, which involves having conversations with the patients and taking your history, examining, doing a mental state examination. So this mental state examination, for example, captures a lot of aspects, the thoughts, the hallucinations, a lot of things that you can pick out from it. So most times we do these things to pick it out. For mood disorders, we use questionnaires a lot. And there are quite a number of questionnaires that, aside from the MDQs that you mentioned, we have the generalized anxiety disorder scale, we have the Beck's anxiety inventory, Hamilton anxiety rating scale. For bipolar disorder, we have the Young Mania rating scale, also the Hamilton depression scale, clinical global impression for bipolar disorders. So also for schizophrenia, you also have assessment tools. Basically, these are questionnaires. A lot of all these that we're talking about, they involve asking questions and filling forms. So basically, that's aside from the clinical interviews and the mental state examinations that we do, the other things are questionnaires, different names, depending on the amount of questions that are in the questionnaires. Yeah.
Right, that's really insightful. So now let's limit it to our country. What are the treatment options that are available in Nigeria?
Yeah. So this is actually another very important question, because a lot of those statistics that you raised at the beginning, the books, they will tell us that there are a lot of things that are underreported. Imagine someone having fear of heights. How many of us will go to the hospital? Doctor, I'm scared of heights. So a lot of these disorders are underreported. The most obvious ones are the schizophrenia, for example. You see the madman on the street, yes, this is schizo. You are sure that this is schizo, but the mood disorders and the anxiety disorders, we tend to underdiagnose them. That is one of the problems. So one of the aims of this kind of discussion is to make people aware that these things that you experience, there are things that you can actually see the mental health team for, because they are important things. It is not normal to have exaggerated fear. It is not normal to have mood swings, like mood swings. We have mood swings with pregnancy and all those things, but these are significant. This has significant impact on us as humans. So whatever disorder, whatever you express that affects your functioning, that affects your behavior and how you carry out your day-to-day activities, then it means there's something wrong. And such people needs to be seen by the mental health assessment team. So what we do in terms of the treatment options, they vary. Treatment options vary, but they are grouped generally into medications. Some people use medications, So these are the things that we do routinely. Then the key thing, also very key, is avoiding stimulants, alcohol, drugs, and all those things, which can worsen the situation.
All right, so Dr. Kayode, now, if these disorders, mental health disorders, are not treated, how does each of them deteriorate the brain?
Oh, yes. So it has been noticed that there are linkages between these mental health disorders and structure and the structural integrity of the brain. So we talk about some of these structural abnormalities manifesting as mental health disorders, because there is a part of the brain that is important for emotion, especially the hippocampus area, and all like that. So in some people, they said it is smaller than it is supposed to be. Some say it's an acquired trait. It's not a genetically, it's not something that we're born with, So yes, one way or the other, there are a lot of things going on in the brain, and these are basically neurotransmitters are like substances that help transmission of neurons and the likes in the brain. So yes, one way or the other, it has been found that in the long term they have effects on the structural integrity of the brain, especially the function also of the brain. So, and there's also linkage with Alzheimer's disease, for example, and which is a structural abnormality, and some of these mental health disorder. But whenever there is a structural cause whenever we find out that there is a structural problem, usually we move away from the psychological, we move to trying to take care of the structural problem. So yes, either ways, they are intertwined.
All right. So finally, Dr. Kayode, what is one myth concerning mental health disorders that you want to debunk? Tell them it's not true.
Okay, wow. So yeah, I think the most common is that you don't get help in the country. It's a very common myth that this person is mad, and the stigma that comes with it. Well, the stigma might not be in the hospital. So these two myths, I think I'll debunk categorically. One is that you don't get help in the country, and the second is that you have to be mad to go to psychiatry hospitals. Those two things are wrong.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Kayode. So much knowledge and insight for you, and I'm really grateful, Dr. Kayode. Thank you so much for being on Health Matters.
Thank you for having me. I hope we've been able to impact people also with this knowledge.
Yes.
The knowledge is very important. Thank you very much.
All right. So if I may add, first of all, you're not mad. And I think we should stop with the self-diagnosis and mental health disorders, because these are not just cute terminologies to tag to yourself because it seems like it's in vogue. These are real life situations that people battle with. It may seem a bit harsh, but it's also the fact. And if you also feel some of these symptoms, again, there is help for you. If you know someone who exhibits some of these symptoms, it's okay to speak with an expert. They are real life situations and challenges. That's it on today's Health Matters. I am Amanda Amos-Igbuwe, sending you so much warmth and saying stay safe, stay healthy, and keep watching BDTV.